At the core of the three major Western world religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, lies the figure of Abraham, a figure called by God and told by God to go to a land that God will show him. And God said, I will give you that land forever, and I will give you many descendants. Abraham went where God showed him. And he inhabited the land, but he had a problem. He was really old, and his wife was really old, and he had no descendants. And so Sarah said to Abraham, take our servant, Hagar, and have a child with her so that your line can be passed along. They do. Hagar has a son named Ishmael, the oldest son of Abraham, and yet the son of Abraham through the servant, Hagar. Then something miraculous happens. God visits Sarah, and Sarah has a son named Isaac. And now Abraham has two sons by two different mothers living in the same house, and it will shock you to learn this does not go well. Soon Sarah says to Abraham, you need to kick out the servant woman and her son. And Abraham does this. Hagar and Ishmael are kicked out of the house of Abraham, leaving Isaac as the unique heir to the promises, to the legacy of God, including the land. This is the story as told in the book of Genesis in the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament. And it's therefore the story that is told in Judaism and Christianity. The line of blessing of Abraham flows through Isaac, his blessed son. But there's another version of the story with a different ending. A version of the story in which Hagar and Ishmael are not cast out by Abraham. They're not abandoned by God. But in fact, Ishmael, as the eldest son, carries the blessing of God, including the promise of land. And this story is told in Islam, where Hagar and Ishmael are the favored line through Abraham. Three world religions divided by a common ancestor in the first generation. Now, you may think this is some interesting old religious story, who cares? All of these old stories are important because people represent people groups. Isaac is one of the forefathers of the Jewish people, and Ishmael is one of the ancestors of the Arab people. Jews and Arabs fighting over the legacy, fighting over the inheritance of their father, as they have been doing, according to this story, for thousands of years. The land promised to Abraham, whose is it? Is it Ishmael's descendants? Is it Isaac's descendants? A land still divided between those on the side of the Israelis saying this land belongs to the ethnic Jews, and those on the side of the Palestinians saying this land belongs to the descendants of Ishmael. The children of Abraham are still fighting over what Dad had promised, what had been promised to Dad, and what Dad was going to hand on to them. Now, in our increasingly secularized society, we might say, well, this is not really important. But for many people on both sides of this, God promised this land forever to their ancestor and therefore to them. And no UN resolution or U.S. president is going to change that. Only to our peril do we in our secularized society ignore the religious narratives that shape identity, policy, and motivations of the majority of the people on this earth. And that's why, if we don't understand the ancient story of Abraham, we will never understand the complexities of what's happening in the Middle East.